Okay, today lecture is practical 2 and the lecture number 3, and we had discussed to determine the true north. Okay, this practical was basically to determine the true north now in the southern hemisphere. As we have done in lecture 2, how can we find out true north in the northern hemisphere? Okay, let's move on. The most of the methods to find the north will remain same in southern hemisphere with a little bit differences, and the differences are listed below. Okay, quickly have a look on the method. The first method to find out the true north is by the sun, as we have done in the northern hemisphere. Okay, now the difference is, if we stand in the southern hemisphere and facing towards the sun, obviously our face will be towards the east and our back will be having the west. Okay, towards the face east and towards the back there will be a west direction. The difference is, but the north pole or the northern north direction will not be of our like left side, rather in southern hemisphere it will be at our right side, and southern area south direction towards our left. Okay, so I repeat, the difference is just the direction of north and south will be in their different direction. What we have done in northern hemisphere when we were discussing by the sun and we were locating the true north, in northern hemisphere we have said the same thing, but north was in the left side, but here north is not in our left side, rather it will be the right, and obviously with respect to the north, southern will be in the opposite direction. So this is just a very small difference. Okay, now the second method to find out and to determine the north is by stick and its shadow method. And if we plant a stick in the ground of the southern hemisphere in the morning, what will happen? In the morning, when the sun will appear before noon, we can observe a shadow. Okay, now the observing shadow, by using it we can draw a circle, as we have done in the case of the northern hemisphere. We have already drawn a circle and by a stick, and then the center of the circle, how much it will be, it depends upon the length of the shadow. Okay, so length of the shadow will be deciding the radius of the circle. This we have done earlier in the northern hemisphere. The same thing will happen in this case, but the difference is, after noon the shadow again will touches the circle, and now if we bisect an angle forming by the two shadow and bisecting line towards the south, and if we extend that bisecting line that is towards the south, that bisecting line now it will be towards the north. Okay, so this is the second method by stick and the shadow method, a very simple method, a very easy method. We have done in the northern hemisphere the same. We have planted a stick in the ground, but the area now has been changed. In the northern hemisphere it was the northern hemisphere area, now the area in this case will be the southern hemisphere. What we have to do, we need to make an observation earlier in the morning, like before noon, and before noon what will happen, the stick will start casting a shadow. Okay, now we need to observe the area has been under the shadow, so we will make a circle according to the length of the shadow, that the radius or the circumference will be decided. Now we need to wait for the afternoon. As the afternoon will approaches, again the shadow will touches the circle. Now the first circle, the first shadow we have noticed and observed. Now the second shadow, and both are bisecting and making an angle, and if we just extend that angle, that will be the southern hemisphere at one direction, and northern hemisphere, the north direction, not the hemisphere, north direction will be in the opposite direction. So this is a very simplest method, and we will I will give you the pictures, the diagrams, respective methods, so the things will be cleared more. Okay, now this is the third method to determine the north, and now it's by watch. In this method, a very simplest method, but all the steps which we have done earlier in the northern hemisphere will be changed, will be reversed. What will be happening in this method, we need to place a watch parallel or the horizontally in front of the sun, towards the sun, and once the sun will appear and the process will take a start. But now we need to make an observation not by the like the smaller hand, rather we will wait the time when the large hand of the clock will be pointing towards the 12 o'clock. Okay, when it will be pointing towards the 12 o'clock, we will make an angle that is a bisecting angle formed by the smaller hand and the 12 o'clock. Okay, I repeat, in the northern hemisphere we were waiting to reach the smaller hand towards the 12 o'clock and the larger hand on the different direction, but now we are waiting for the larger hand to reach at 12 o'clock, and then we will make an angle with the smaller hand wherever it is pointing and 12 o'clock. Okay, this is the point, and now the bisecting line, when it will be extended, it will be towards the north. So this is how the method has been done. Okay, now again there is a method, the fourth method. How can we determine the true north by the stars, as we have done in the northern hemisphere by the polar star, but in the southern hemisphere there is no polar star, so the heading is by southern cross. So now we need to know what is southern cross. What happened in the southern hemisphere, as we have seen in the northern hemisphere, we were finding out and determining the true north by the great bears. Okay, the group of star which appears in the months of February and March, and once we had a look on the sky and seeing the great bears, we quickly find out where the polar star, the north star, the pointing star is located, and once you get to know where actually it is located, and that is directing towards the north, so the other opposite direction must be the south. So that was the method we have done. But what's the difference in this method here in southern hemisphere? In southern hemisphere, due to the bulge of the earth, there is no polar star. Okay, the earth has a bulge, and due to this bulging property of the earth, there is no visibility of the polar star to appear on the sky. So what we can do, instead of polar star here, there is a group of 4 stars appear in the southern hemisphere. S dot H represent the southern hemisphere and N dot H represent the northern hemisphere. So this is the short abbreviation I had used. Okay, the 4-star group appear in the southern hemisphere, and these stars pointing towards the south direction. So this is the way how can we know if this is the south direction, the other direction must be the north. So this is the difference between the northern hemisphere and southern hemisphere to determine north by the stars. Okay, now the last method is by the magnetic compass. Okay, now the fourth okay, now not the fourth, rather the fifth method to determine the north is by the magnetic compass. And as all the methods we have done in the northern and the southern hemisphere, especially in the southern hemisphere, seems to be very inaccurate, time consuming and impractical for the layman to find out the north. So okay, so it seems to be very inaccurate and impractical. So what we have done, we are going to find out the magnetic north through a magnetic compass. For this method, the point where the gravity of the earth is concentrated, that area will be named as magnetic north. How can we find it out? This area is basically will having some minor error which can be like ignored, and the device which is used to find out the magnetic north is called magnetic compass, magnetic needle, or the Trump compass. Okay, how can we use that magnetic compass, the trough compass, or the magnetic needle? We need to take a look on the methodology. The methodology to find out the magnetic north by a magnetic compass is written like this device. This magnetic compass is basically covered in a metal case with a glass slit, and that magnetic metal case could be easily removed or moved by a screw. Okay. On both sides of the needle, the degrees are mentioned like 0 to 5 degrees interval. It is loosened at first when we are going to start to use it to find out the north. What we have to do, we need to loose at first and allow the needle to move freely. When the needle will start moving freely, there should be a care need to be taken, like we need to remove all the metal objects in the surrounding, because if the metal objects will be in the surrounding, the magnet can easily attract those metals, and our practical could be with errors can come. So when we remove all the metals nearby, then the readings will be the more accurate. Okay, now what do we need to do? We need to move the metal case very slowly, and once you are moving the metal case, the metal compass very slowly, the point will come when needle will start resting at one point, and that must be a 0 degree, and that position will be the magnetic north. So the 0 degree area where the needle head is basically marking or pointing, that is the position of the magnetic north. So these are the methods we can use to find out and determine the north in the southern hemisphere. This is the lecture 3. Now in the fourth lecture I will do the bearings with the some questions.